Hey everybody, this is Jeff Martin. This is Jeff Martin with Magic City Books. We are so thrilled to have you with us here for our ongoing virtual author event series, which we have been doing well over a year now. And we've done, I think, gosh, it's got to be like 160 of these in the last year or so. And it's been a really wonderful way to stay connected with all of you and to kind of have a tether to our audience that we have needed so badly, and also reach people outside of Tulsa, outside of Oklahoma, outside of even the country sometimes. So if you're watching from beyond our city limits, I welcome you and I appreciate having you here. I'm really excited for this event, and it's part of kind of a collection of events that we're going to be doing over the next couple of weeks and have been doing, obviously in connection with the centennial of the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre. And I would encourage you to go to our website, magiccitybooks.com, and you can see the schedule of other programs we have coming up. That's everything from 1 week from today, an actual real people event. This is an in-person event. Get prepared for this. I know we're not ready for it yet, but we're doing an actual in-person event on Greenwood, on 700 North Greenwood next Sunday with Damon Lindelof and Cord Jefferson from the HBO show Watchmen. They're going to be here to talk about that program. We're going to watch an episode that Cord Jefferson wrote and won an Emmy for, which I think is the best episode of that series, and it's one of the best episodes that we've, I think, seen on television the last couple of years. And then we're going to have one of the descendants of the race massacre there to answer some questions as well. So it should be a really powerful event. That's 1 week from today on the 30th at 7 o'clock. That's free and open to everybody. But then lots of other stuff coming up as well. So go to our website and check that out. Couldn't be more thrilled to be hosting Mr. Don Lemon tonight. If you haven't had a chance to, all of you watching have a copy of This is the Fire. If you haven't had a chance to read it yet, you're in for something really special. And we're going to talk about the book. We're going to talk about what led to the book. We're going to talk about the influences of the book. We're going to talk about James Baldwin. We're going to talk about a million different things tonight. I hope you guys have questions. If you do, please drop them into the Q&A here, and we'll get to some of those as we go. And if you need extra copies of the book to give to your friends and family, or just to read more than once, we'll drop some links in the chat there as well. So welcome to Tulsa virtually, Mr. Don Lemon. So thrilled to have you here.
Hey, it's good to be here, Jeff. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
A great way to spend a Sunday early evening.
Yeah. I guess before we begin, we need to address something, which is you freaked people out a few days back.
Gosh, Jeff.
And you caused an internet sensation, which I think may have been planned. I think it was a total PR stunt, I think. But you renamed your show. It is no longer CNN Tonight. It is now Don Lemon Tonight. But you came onto Twitter and told people something was happening. What was that aftermath of that like?
Well, I said it on the air that it was the end of an era, Jeff. I said end of an era for CNN Tonight with Don Lemon. And I said, but, tune in on Monday, changes are coming and you'll see. And I didn't realize that people would think I was leaving. And so I said, I had to come back on Twitter and say, I'm not leaving. I just said changes are, tune in. I'm not going anywhere. So it wasn't a stunt. Was I being a little sort of coy and teasing people? Absolutely. Did I think it was going to do what it did? I really didn't. It was a miscalculation. I did not think it was people were going to care that much, because I didn't say, if I was going to leave CNN, I would say, hey, I'm leaving CNN. I'm done. It's been great. Goodbye. But I didn't say that. Maybe I was a little too coy.
They thought that like Pauly Shore was going to be hosting it on Monday or something when they tuned in.
It was not a stunt. I didn't. It wasn't a stunt.
Well, congrats on the new name. I think it does mean something. I think to kind of have that ownership of that name, and it's been a long journey, kind of getting to where you are and owning that primetime spot. So congrats on that, and also congratulations on the book. I know that you did. For those watching, you did a bit of a book tour when the book came out, and usually they cluster those, and we asked that you do this event a little bit closer to the centennial that's happening now, and you were kind enough to agree to do that. So thank you. I guess I'm curious to know what you know or knew of the events here in Tulsa. How long have you known about that? Obviously, it's really come to the cultural forefront the last couple of years. But is that something that was on your radar for some time?
It was on my radar for a little bit, but it wasn't something, quite honestly, Jeff, that I learned about in elementary school or junior high school or high school or college.
Mhm.
It was something that I came to know as an adult. And so while I knew about the Greenwood story, and people had talked, I mean, there was sort of a vague, recollection in my background that, people would talk about it. Black History Month, you would learn some sort of, sometimes you'd learn things about it. But, it wasn't something that was top of mind. I certainly knew about it, but I didn't know as much about it. And I've learned, way more in the last few years, obviously. I think many people have. I got to interview actually the director of the documentary that we're doing on CNN about Tulsa. She
Yeah.
did, spent the last year or so there doing it. So I got to learn a lot more, especially after the bodies were found, the graves were found. You learn a little bit more and more, but it wasn't, it wasn't something that we learned about in school. No.
Yeah, same here. I grew up here. I never learned about it until I was, gosh, almost 18 or 19 years old.
Yeah.
Um,
And you're what, 25 now?
yeah, exactly. 25. Yeah. I was shocked to be, if we're going to talk about that for a second, I was shocked to find out you're 55 years old. I thought you were like 43. I'll be honest with you. I was kind of like taken aback. I was listening to an interview with you and John Heilemann, who I love as well.
Yeah.
And he said you guys are the same age. And I'm just going to tell you, he looks 55.
I looked a lot younger 5 years ago than I do now. I mean,
Yeah, right.
that's all I'll say. I think we all
Didn't we all? Didn't we all? So congratulations on the book. I want to start with talking about, why you wrote the book. And I think it's very obvious when you're reading it that, had events not occurred over the last couple of years, you were changed by some of the events. I was even looking back to some of your earlier broadcasts. You've been on the air in different capacities for a long time now, but the way you presented yourself, and you just mentioned this, and the fact that you said that 5 years ago you may have looked younger. These last 5 or 6 years, it seems like, have kind of changed the way you do your job. Not in the sense that you're not objective, but in the sense of maybe where you put your priorities as far as what you're covering. Even, gosh, 2014, 2015, I'm looking back to there, and it just seemed like um, kind of a different presentation. Can you talk about how, you've kind of changed in terms of how you decide to give time on your show to issues of race and things like that?
Well, I think just like everybody who is, who lives or who in any profession, you become better at what you do. You become more comfortable with it. You evolve, you grow, you learn how to do it. Um, in a, you learn how to do things in a way, I guess, in a way that you didn't really know or understand before. So I think what you've seen is really just me as evolving as a journalist and someone who's more comfortable sitting in the seat that I'm sitting in, and more comfortable as a journalist and learning how to do my job without working harder but better, right? More efficient. And so I think I'm a better communicator now. And so now, especially over the past 5 years, especially since the death of my sister, which I write about in my book, there's an urgency to what I do and to my profession, and to me, not only as a professional, but also as just a human being, just a person. That I feel that that we have to focus on the things that are important, um, hold people accountable. As the death of my sister showed, no moment is promised. I don't know if I'm going to be here in the next second. And then George Floyd, certainly over the last year, watching the death of that man on camera and watching the way the whole world reacted, and then the way some of the people who, initially said that he was killed, he was murdered, it was awful, to sort of coming around to now saying, well, I'm not sure, he should have complied and all those things. I think that just sort of gave me a perspective and an urgency and a focus that I didn't have before. And yeah, I think that we in America, there's a lot that we need to take care of politically and personally, issues of race that don't normally get covered. So I think that's what I feel now. I feel like I am reflecting the times that we're in and trying to move the culture along in a positive way.
So we're a couple of days away from the 1 year anniversary of George Floyd's murder. I'm sure you'll obviously be covering that a lot next week. Um, is it what I'm kind of fascinated by where we are 1 year later, right? So we're 1 year later. We have a president now who acknowledges that Black Lives Matter. We have a verdict, at least for one of the officers. Obviously, the other three are pending still, but a murder conviction for Derek Chauvin. A lot has happened in that 1 year. Do you see that as progress or just as, yes, that's what should have happened in terms of some of, and the movement itself? I mean, if you think about this past year, and I'm leaving the pandemic aside, obviously that's part of the kind of tumult that we've gone through this year, but how do you kind of deal with everything that's happened in that 12-month period? And do you see it in a lowercase p progressive way?
That in a way that we've made progress, not
Yeah.
progressive in the terms of not politically progressive,
Right.
which also is part of it.
Yes.
Yes, I do see it as progressive. I see it as people wanting to move forward. I see people giving a lot of thought to it. Some lip service, which we'll see if that turns into action. A lot of statements from companies about what they're going to do. A lot of sort of performative caring from people who are said to be allies or who weren't allies before. So that's all well and good. But I have seen some real things that I hope will last. So yeah, I do see it as progressive, and I do see us as moving forward in this moment. But I think it's going to take what you see in the question before that you asked me about. I think it's going to take more of that from people who have some influence in society and in our culture, whether it's politically, socially, whatever it is, through media, entertainment, as an artist, whatever it is. I think it's going to take more of that urgency and seriousness in order to help this continue to be progressive. And my phone was just, I said seriousness, and it was asking me, who would you like to call?
Yeah, no Siri, just serious. So I'm curious.
You have to feel some of that as well. You don't feel that at all?
Well, it's interesting. Living in this city, of course, like I said, it's going to be the white hot center of the next week for a lot of coverage. Every news outlet in the world is going to be here next weekend covering that. Stacey Abrams and John Legend and Jesse Jackson and everybody in the world will kind of be here for a couple of days, kind of looking at this. But what's interesting is you have that George Floyd murder, and 2 weeks or so later, a few weeks later, you have the Juneteenth ceremony here where Trump does his first rally in Tulsa just a few weeks later and tries to do it on Juneteenth weekend. And there's this huge clash of all these different things. And I look at where we are now coming up on that, and I think it almost seems like two different worlds. And the fact that we could go from one place to the other in 12 months seems, it almost makes me suspicious of how much it's changed in the sense of,
Well, you have to remember it has changed, but still the reality politically is that it can all flip back in an instant. It has a definite possibility to do it in less than a year.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
and not to mention that, in the last, even just since the Chauvin, verdict, how many young Black men have been killed by police. Obviously it's those numbers. Although, the one thing, excuse me, the one thing that I haven't seen and I'd be curious to see is, I think people either think that that number is far higher than we actually know. And they say, okay, well, we caught something on camera that's a representation of something that obviously we have no real sense of. Or there are people saying, well, because of that, and now that we have phones with cameras and things, the numbers are probably dropping and people are more reticent to pull their gun and different things like that. And obviously, I don't know if there's a scientific way to find that out exactly, but what's your sense of that? Do you feel like these things are making an impact on the decision-making level of law enforcement in this country?
what do you mean? So what's your question? That what's happening, or do you threat? Because I thought your question was leading to, is it happening more or what have you? I'm not sure I understand. What do you mean?
Well, my question is, do you think that what's happening in society, meaning these movements, is having an actual impact on when an officer pulls someone over, that they're actually thinking
In the
about
moment.
the publicity or even just the negative impact that could have on a reputation, you know?
If it's causing people to be more responsible, I hope
Yeah.
it is. I think maybe it is. If it's causing people to second guess their actions, um, possibly, and I'm not sure that's a bad thing. I know that in certain situations, it's so quick you don't have a moment to really think about it, right? So I hope it's not. But how, when you think about it, how can it not? Um, I think that the moments where you actually have to think about it in that instance, I think there are fewer and far between the moments where you actually have a chance to think about seeing someone else's humanity.
Mm.
So while, the split second decision moment is very important, the other moment too, where you can de-escalate or decide in the moment as the person with the power and the gun to try to calm things down, to make sure that it doesn't evolve into a situation, or devolve into a situation that becomes deadly. I think you have more of those opportunities than you have the other opportunities. So I think it's having an effect? I do. I think it's yet to be seen to sort of quantify exactly how much of an effect it's having, but I do really think that it is. And but it's not like flipping a switch. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not flipping a switch. It's something that takes a little bit of time. I mean, I'm sure, hopefully you see it and other people see it around the country.
Well, it's funny is these issues of trust and things like that. A good example would be this. Tulsa was one of the few cities hit with a ransomware attack over the last couple of weeks, and it was
Yeah.
our city government was hit. And one of the things that affected was, for example, like utility payments. People aren't able to get online and pay their utility bills, things like that. But a news report came out a couple of days ago that said our police department says part of the ransomware attack affected the body cams of all the police here and that they won't be functional for the next indeterminate time.
Is
And
that
of
real?
course, yeah, that's what it was reported. And of course, immediately the reaction becomes, I smell a rat here. People don't want to have body cams on for the next week and a half while all these things are happening. You can see the kind of wheels turning on social media and people
Yeah.
who are already suspect of the police happening. And obviously that's feeding into a pre-existing narrative like that this was some choice and we're going to use this to do that. So
People are always suspicious. I mean, what are you
yeah,
going to do?
that's true.
The election was stolen. It was,
It's true. It's true. And obviously this is on the kind of opposite side politically of that, people, but that kind of
Listen, I think questions should always be asked, but I mean, is that would be a long way to go. There would be a lot to do in order to turn body cameras off
yeah,
with a specific, you know,
yeah, for sure. For
focus
sure.
or reason to shoot or take someone's life because they are a person of color.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot.
But one of the things I've always enjoyed about your reporting is obviously you're a very pragmatic person. And, I would say, I don't know, I consider you kind of moderate in the sense of I've heard you speak about things like, for example, you know, you're not on board with defund the police as a slogan, but the concept behind it has merit. But you think that the branding that people use sometimes gets in the way of the actual attempt to change things, and that it strips people of their possible allies that they might have. Is that something that you think is the case still?
I do. Well, I know that to be true, and I know people don't like to hear that. I think many of the concepts and the proposals and what people want behind in the defund the police, um, you know, whatever you want, movement. I think that it's legitimate, and they have very valid arguments that should be and suggestions that should be studied and should be considered. But I think just the whole idea of saying defund the police, I think, turns people off. It's just the word. It has nothing to do with any sort of how I feel politically or what I think about activists. It's just the word. It's like the word, when you say the word F
Mm.
you, that word you feel it in a certain way. Certain words have feelings, and certain words sound exactly like what they are. And defund is a word that sounds like get rid of,
Yeah.
right? And no one wants to get rid of the police. We shouldn't get rid of police. Should we think about how we use police, what how police are used in society, what their actual jobs are, what they should be doing, what kind of calls they should be going on. All of those things are completely fine. But to say I want to defund or get rid of the police, I think it's just ridiculous. And that's what defund sounds like. Even though
Yeah.
that's
So
not what it is.
if the slogan had become reform the police, it would have been a completely different model, you think, or
It's just a word. Just think about it.
yeah.
It's just a word. It's like calling someone. If I say to you honestly, Jeff, I think you're less than smart. You'd be like, whoa, wow. But if I said, Jeff, you're dumb, right? I think you're dumb. It's
Yeah.
the same thing. I don't
Yeah.
think any of those things. I'm just saying. One makes you think like, well, wow, maybe I'm not that smart. The other one's like dumb. That word carries weight
Yeah.
and a certain feeling. That's like defund carries weight and a certain feeling. I just think it's not strategic. It's not strategic. And
Yeah.
so if you want to get something accomplished, one must be strategic in what they're doing. That's it. That's all I'm saying.
Well, that's actually so true. And I was thinking about this. Obviously, there are these buzzwords that get co-opted. And what's so interesting about it in terms of the um, liberal and conservative side of it is the conservative side seems to have message and brand control that's unbelievable. Like one person will say something and the next week everybody's saying the exact same thing. Obviously, they're more in line with each other. But I was thinking about cancel culture specifically, right? The idea. Imagine if the Democratic side, the progressive side, had taken that and run with it when, say, the Dixie Chicks got canceled, in 2003 or whenever that happened, because the concept was the same, but now it's been co-opted by one political party to kind of do one thing, right?
Yeah.
And and it's and how much do you spend your time? This before we get, I want to dive into the book a little more, but do you get sick of talking about these same things over and over? Because it seems like for weeks and weeks you'll have one thing like that, like cancel culture or like a defund the police. How can you say something new about it after weeks and weeks?
Well, it depends on who I'm talking to. I
Yeah.
mean, it's like when you see your friends, don't you basically have the same conversations over and over, but a little bit different?
Yeah, probably. Yeah,
Yeah.
probably.
So it's like, hey, dude, didn't I give you that advice? You didn't break up with her? All right, well,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
this time, and it's kind of the same thing, but just a little bit different until you make some progress and you move on. So
Mm.
no, I don't. It gets frustrating sometimes when people don't understand or um, when they use what I'm saying um, as a political cudgel to make a political point when it's not meant that way, or when they take only a portion of what I've said in order to make their point, and that becomes frustrating. So yeah, I look. I don't like little buzz terms or words like cancel culture or anything like that because I just think it's too easy to categorize it, to put it in a box,
Mhm.
and to put people in a box. Because do I believe in the term cancel culture? Not really. I was just having a conversation today, no more than 2 hours ago with Chris about cancel culture. We're having lunch, and I didn't, I think cancel culture. I think it's like a pendulum that is swinging too far if you believe in it. Um, but I also think that people have to be held accountable for what they do and they say, but that doesn't mean that they need to go away
Mm.
because they say something bad or do something bad. Sometimes the accountability is in the learning process and the process that they're going through because they've made a mistake and because they're trying to rectify it and to reconcile what happened. And I think sometimes that is the restitution and the accountability. And it doesn't necessarily mean like, okay, you got to be silenced. I'll see you later. And also, being silenced doesn't mean that you are taken off a particular platform because that is the individuals or the platforms um, that is their individual right to be able to say, I don't want someone like you on my platform. So
Yeah.
that's not necessarily canceling someone either. That's just saying, we don't want your kind around here, you're thinking.
Yeah. I mean, that's no shirt, no shoes, no service on a digital scale.
Amen. Thank you. That's very simple. I'm going to steal that if you don't mind.
Yeah, please do.
Okay, I will.
So I'm curious, you mentioned getting frustrated. One of the things that I talked about, you kind of evolving on air, at least to me, having watched you for many years, is you're more comfortable to me getting frustrated on air. Like when something pisses you off or something really gets to you, you don't seem to not embrace it. You'll say, hey, I'm mad. This is not right. Did that take some time to get comfortable doing that and kind of,
Yeah.
yeah.
Talk about the possibility of getting canceled.
Mhm.
I put myself out there. I reveal things about myself that most people don't. I'm willing to make a mistake on the air. I'm willing to make an error. I'm willing to lean in. I'm willing to call people out on their bullshit. I'm willing to whatever, because I think a conversation should be just like we're sitting here talking. There's no difference in if you were sitting in my very extremely messy office, which is, by the way, Jeff, this is how most people's home offices look.
Yeah.
That BS you see on TV is all curated and manufactured. It's like, oh, what am I going to get a roommate, or I'll put this book here and this will be perfect.
Yeah.
This is what people's home offices look like, right? A lampshade, an errant lampshade here, and I've got an old plant over there, and I've got, look,
And
there's
you just moved in last week, right?
No, I moved in like a year ago.
Yeah.
This has been up here for a year, maybe more. So I think that we have to be, I feel that in order to be real and to be just like everybody else at home, that I have to be just like everybody else at home.
Yeah. Well,
you know what I mean?
Yeah. Tell me about the concept of the double negative. This is something you talk about in the book, and this is the idea that you are what you call yourself a double negative, which is Black and gay, right? And that obviously.
Wait, I'm Black.
Yeah.
Yes.
Adjust your screens, everybody. Don Lemon is Black. But you talk about this idea that there's this kind of dual, I don't even want to call it a handicap, but you present it as saying this is kind of a barrier, especially in the professional world or the world you went into. Talk about that.
Just right. Well, I mean, it was the reason that it took me so long to come out publicly. I was out with friends and loved ones before, because the advice was, well, you're Black in media already, or you're a Black man in America. Do you really need another strike against you? Now you're going to be Black and gay. So people will criticize you, whatever they're going to do or think about you, because you're Black. Now you add homophobia on top of it. And so who wants that? And that was one reason my mom was so concerned about me, being gay, not because, well, I should say what she was taught religiously, that played a part in it. But once she began to understand the ridiculousness in that, then it became a concern, a more practical concern about my safety and my happiness, and how people were going to treat me. So, and my security as a professional and just as a human being. And so, that all played into it. And once she realized that, that I didn't have horns growing out of my head, that I had the ability to have autonomy in society, that I could be out, gay, Black, and self-possessed, was it made it okay for her, and it actually made it okay for me as well, because even while we were both learning at the same time. So you think it's a journey just for the person you're telling, hey, I'm gay, like my mom or a loved one. It's actually a journey for you as well, because the reason you're revealing it, when you reveal that, your relationship becomes new again. So you start to use, it's a sort of a restart of a relationship, and it's a learning process for both people. So yeah, the double negative, as you say, or the two strikes, that's what happens. But it made both of us better people, because then we learned a lot about ourselves, each other, and the world.
What year was the first time you ever were on camera? What year was your first debut on TV?
Oh, on television, not just, oh, come on. We had Super 8 with no sound, where I'm jumping into the pool, as a little tiny.
Like your first job where you were on, paid to be on TV. What year would that have been?
Well, I used to do television commercials as a young college student. So I would do like, these sort of TV catalog, like where I would be wearing and it would be like a flash of just different people doing different poses. So you like, and polo shirts 1995 at your local store. So that was one thing. And then I had to do like a thing like, I would do like little commercials like, if you think like Polaroid, whatever film, but it was like just for the local thing in Baton Rouge. So that was that. And then I moved to New York City and finished my degree in journalism, and I was working for Channel 5 on the Upper East Side, WNYW, and I put my tape together and I started working for an urban affairs show there.
So this would have been like what, late 80s, early 90s?
1993.
Yeah.
94.
So my question is,
94.
This double negative you talk about at that moment, it seems like, having obviously the world we live in now, it's certainly not that and it might be from a profit standpoint, of course, but these media companies they want these things, or at least there's the impression that they want. So do you view being Black and gay, if you were coming into the business now, obviously it's not the same double negative that you're talking about then, talk about how that's changed. Obviously your CNN or MSNBC, they're looking for, or at least outwardly saying they want, more diverse representation.
Well, one would hope, I hope that's true, because everyone says, oh, it's so great that Don's out and Rachel's out and Anderson's out and all those people are out.
Mm-hmm.
But we weren't.
Yeah, none of you came on board as out. Yeah,
a lot of us got to be where we were, except maybe for the Rachel may be, the only one who is the only example of someone who may have been out the entire time. I'm not exactly sure about her story. I can tell you about my story and the people I know for sure. But most of the people who are out on television now were not out when they got their jobs and when they started to create the whatever it is that they are, the celebrity or the amount of professional, wherever they are now professionally. That started as as part of a process of not being out, of being closeted. Mm-hmm. So I would hope that news managers and companies are hiring, or just in general are hiring people who are openly gay. So I think that remains to be seen. It certainly appears to be easier. It's easier for me, but I only know it's easier because I was hiding who I was when I had this job initially, and then I eventually came out in this book, as a matter of fact.
Yes, which was, what, 2011? When was that?
2011, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm curious, it's obvious that James Baldwin would play a big role in your life. Obviously, we talked about those two parts of your life. Those were two parts of his life. He had to move to Paris to really kind of enjoy living as an out man, especially at that time. This book, in many ways, I think pays tribute to the work that Baldwin did. Can you talk about the connections and even some of the stylistic choices you made in terms of the letter form that you're writing to your family and some of the things that he did?
I have books everywhere.
Yes, the fire next time. So you can see obviously the title kind of riffing on that. Yeah.
So James Baldwin had the biggest influence on me as anyone when it comes to being Black in America, and then certainly being gay in America. He was a gay Black man. And when I began to have an idea about writing a book, especially because it didn't happen until after George Floyd, I thought about the thing that had the biggest influence on my life when it came to race and who I was, and that was The Fire Next Time by James Baldwin. So I've always loved James Baldwin since actually one of my first boyfriends gave me a copy of Giovanni's Room in college. It was my freshman year in college, probably my very first 2 or 3 months in college. And I read it and I fell in love with James Baldwin. And then I picked up The Fire Next Time. And then I read the entire Baldwin canon, everything that there was to read then, almost within a matter of, I think, 2 years. I read all of it. I didn't go like that fast. And so when I thought about writing my book after George Floyd, because after Transparent, I said, I'm not going to write a book again. It's too personal. It's too much. It takes too much time. It's heart wrenching. Are people going to like it? Are they going to buy it? I don't want to have to deal with that. I have a job. It pays me well. I'm not doing it. And then after George Floyd, I said, I'm going to do it. And so we were in the middle of quarantine, and I sat down and started writing a letter to my nephew, like James Baldwin wrote in his book, The Fire Next Time. I started writing a letter to my nephew because I couldn't see him. We're all in quarantine. I couldn't go to Louisiana. We couldn't travel. And I wanted him to know that he was beautiful and Black. And I wanted him to be able to accept his beauty, his Blackness, his smarts, or whatever, with an ease that I wasn't able to master at his age. And even sometimes now, I wanted him to know that it was okay. And that I was a little bit, quite frankly, embarrassed about the world that I was handing off to him, that he was going to inherit from me, because I think I hadn't done a good enough job.
Yeah.
And so that's where that came from.
And if you guys haven't read The Fire Next Time, obviously this is a good 1-2 punch to read those two together. Anytime you can put some James Baldwin in your life, that's a good thing. Let's get a couple of audience questions here. We've got a question from, I believe the name is Colleen.
I saw the question. I knew you were going to read that question. I was like, that's a great question, Colleen.
All right, yes. So the question says, for everybody, it says, I loved your book. How can we talk to each other about racism the way you talk in your book without being offensive? Everyone seems easily offended these days, but these are hard conversations that are necessary. Obviously, the subtitle of your book is, how you talk, what you say to your friends about racism. Yeah, how do we do this? And I guess, she says without offending people. How do you do that?
You have to stop worrying about being offended, and you have to stop being so easily offended. Everyone has to stop being so easily offended. And so what you have to start from a place of truth and a place of trust. And that means if you are going to have a real conversation about race with anyone who matters, then you must have a relationship with that person. So I would not suggest that you walk up to someone in the middle of the street, or someone you don't know, a stranger, and start talking about race. What I would suggest is that you find a friend who doesn't look like you, someone who you have confidence in, they have confidence in you, that you love and trust. And you start talking about these things, and you make a vow not to become offended. Or even if you do become offended, it's okay that you're going to remain friends and work out these issues. That's the only way that you're going to do it. So I would suggest that, especially, quite honestly, for white people, don't be more afraid and offended by the possibility that someone may think that you have a racial bias, whether it's conscious or unconscious, or that you may think the wrong way or say something wrong about race. Don't be so worried about, don't take such offense to it that it means that you're a bad person, because people do that and they become aggrieved. And then when you become aggrieved, that changes the whole dynamic of the conversation. The conversation becomes about you than the actual act of racism, or trying to figure out how you deal with issues of race. So stop being judgmental, be more curious, and less judgmental, and less aggrieved and offended, and sort of try to remain neutral. And then that's where you start. And then you have to start doing the work. Because once you delve into it and once you start doing it, you're going to wake up and go, oh my gosh, because racism is it's like a spell. If you don't have to deal with it and you don't know about it, that's what privilege is about. It's not having to think about it. It's like us dumb guys never have to think about what it's like to be a woman. We don't have to think about what it's like to every month to get a cycle. We don't have to think about what it's like to be in the work environment and sort of not have the preeminent voice and not, be the person who's in charge. We don't have to think about any of those things. We don't have to walk in high heels. And so for us, it's not an issue. And it's just that simple when it comes to race. If you're a person who is not Black or brown in this country, you never really have to think about those things. And so be open to that possibility that you're going to learn something, rather than, well, I'm not this or I'm not that. Be open to the possibility that you are, and then move on from there.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you're talking about empathy, I guess, at its core.
It's not really just about empathy, because I don't want you to feel empathy or sympathy or anything for me. I want you to know and learn. I don't want you to tolerate me. I want you to know and learn. I want you to be on the same level as me, that when something happens, you see it as quickly as I do and go, okay, that's some bullshit right there. That's where we want everyone to be, because then once you're able to say that's some bullshit right there, then you don't participate in the bullshit.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm curious, we were talking before about, some of the identity issues, and I'm curious, obviously this book is very much dealing with, it's in the title, talking about racism. And obviously it's a topic you talk about on your show a lot, and it's obviously been in the news a lot. Do you feel like you talk as much about LGBTQ issues as you do about issues of race? Is that, if not, is that because of just what's in the news on a day-to-day basis, or you don't have the chance to kind of advocate for that, or where do you see your place on that conversation?
Well, yeah, I do. Listen, I do talk about LGBTQ issues, but I think you know, you don't see people, it does happen, but you don't see specific as many incidents of, let me put it this way. I've been discriminated against more because of my race than my sexuality, because people don't always know that I'm gay, right? But people initially, they see me and visually I am a person of color. And there are people of color who happen to be gay as well, right? So it's not as much of a visual focal point. And I quite honestly, even though I do think that it is similar, and that all racism and that all discrimination, that it has, there is some equivalence. They're not exactly equal.
Mm.
Yeah.
Because that, not to speak to the, because one of the ongoing things is, you're familiar with this change to like the pride flag, for example, right? So there's a movement to change the pride flag to where it's much more inclusive and have a brown stripe and a black stripe, and kind of be more about that and kind of merge the issues, right? And I was just curious what you think about, should these things kind of stand on their own, where each should they be, is all injustice injustice, or
All
should
injustice is injustice, but it's not all equal, because even as a black man, I've been discriminated against by gay white people. So it's not all equal. All injustice is injustice. But I mean, if you look, I think that our community, the gay people, and listen, I don't know when I say our, I mean me. I have no idea what your sexuality is. But I think that if you look at what's happening in the gay community now, I think there's more. We're leaning more towards equality than we ever have. But when I was coming up and coming out, there were, the gay community was extremely polarized and racist, and especially towards, Black queer people. And so I think that, yes, discrimination is happening against gay people, but it's also happening against gay Black people, against Black people, or gay people who are Black. And then beyond that, Black people who are not gay. So I don't think it's equal.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you can't be in the closet if you're Black. You're Black everywhere, right? Obviously, I mean, that may sound silly to say, but the idea of kind of being able to choose, when you're kind of confronted with certain things is something.
But I'm not saying people can choose their gayness. I'm just saying it's again, like we go back to the word of.
No, you choose who you tell you're out to, right? Obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've had some questions, obviously, even before this event. We had people saying, I loved Don's Marvin Gaye special. People were all excited about Marvin Gaye. And I'm curious, you have so much going on. You talked about you never wanted to write a book again. You've got a job that pays. Why did you say, I want to take on this extra work and do a special about Marvin Gaye?
Is that okay? Because it was the 50th anniversary of the What's Going On album.
Yeah.
And Rolling Stone named it the #1 album of all time. And if you listen to the lyrics of that song and the message from that album, everything is still relevant now. Where he talks about police brutality, picket lines, picket signs. When he talks about the environment, he talks about the concept of God. He talks about saving the children. Every single thing that he talks about in that album is still relevant, and we haven't really addressed them in a substantial manner. So I wanted to dive into it because it's become the anthem for so many movements over the past 50 years for equality and equity. And so, and Marvin Gaye was, I mean, a genius. If you go back and you look at his body of work, it is just unbelievable and spectacular. And I got to sit down with Stevie Wonder, who has a body of work that's unbelievable and spectacular, to talk to him about Marvin Gaye.
Yeah, I've heard of him. I've heard of him. Yeah.
Stevie Wonder, you might recognize his name.
Yeah, yeah, he's gonna be doing big things one day. What's your favorite Marvin Gaye?
Frederick Douglass.
I'm curious. Yeah. My favorite is "I Want You." I mean, outside of what's going on, that's like the obvious masterpiece. But like, what's your go-to? You got to put on one tune from Marvin Gaye on your iPhone.
Oh, it would be "What's Happening, Brother." "What's Happening, Brother," or "Inner City Blues."
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, I mean, "What's Happening, Brother" is it's so good because it's like Marvin Gaye is having a conversation with himself. I mean, the whole concept of the song is for, are you guys still there?
Yeah.
That's some weird, okay. The whole concept of the song is Marvin Gaye having a conversation with a friend, but it's only him singing it on the song. "Hey baby, what you know good? I'm just getting back like you knew I would. War is hell. When will it end? When will people start getting together again?" And it's the same sort of thing. It's like, we're now coming out of a quarantine. When will it end? When will people start getting together again? Are things really getting better, like the newspaper said? So, I mean, it's just, it's genius.
It's true. And I never quite realized what an amazing drummer Marvin Gaye was. We don't have to get into that thing, but like he drummed on like all these amazing Motown tunes that everybody knew about. Anyway, we'll talk about that afterwards. But we have more important things to talk about. But we have one more question here, which I think is a little bit. I'm curious. I think this is not exactly what you said, but Patricia says, you said that Trump becoming president was a good thing, or you see it as a good thing. Would you elaborate on that?
Patricia. So it's not exactly what I said. I said that he was the president we deserved and quite possibly the president we needed. And that was because I said the president we deserve is because people were living under the false pretense that we were in a post-racial society, that we were living in a post-racial society after electing a Black president. And I think most people in this country, and I shouldn't say I think all people of color in this country, especially Black people, knew that that wasn't true. And so I think Trump exposed the racism that was not even buried, but hidden just beneath the surface. And I know this is, all of this, back and forth and turbulence that we're feeling from dealing with these issues of race. And it feels awful at the time. And sadly, people should not be dying. But I think it's needed in order to be able to address this issue in a way that can actually change, in a substantial way that changes things, that really makes a difference. It really makes us stop doing these stupid things about race. Because what does it really matter?
Just for a second, I'm curious that, Trump obviously took specific aim at you. It's not, I don't think, a stretch to say it was, because of your race. Obviously, a million journalists were saying similar things about him, but for some reason he was pointing you out specifically. Do you agree with that that was part of the motivation to kind of turn you into a caricature in a sense? And did it have any impact? Did you see, were you getting hate mail? Were you getting death threats after he really started calling you out by name? Did you see any kind of spike in the negative feedback to you?
Well, let me just say this. I think that he's transactional. So do I think it made a difference that I was a Black person? Yes. Because it only helped his narrative, and it only helped him with his supporters and the people who were most receptive to the possibility that I was everything that he was saying that I am. Do you understand that?
Yeah.
So so the truth was not on his side. So when the truth is not, Donald Trump lied a lot. He's a compulsive liar. There's nothing about that. That's not an opinion. there's no like, how dare you say that? And Don Lemon's giving his opinion. We have called him in enough lies to say that he's a liar. And so if the truth is not on your side and someone is saying the truth about you, what do? You try to impugn their reputation and their credibility. You say that they're fake and they're false and what they're doing is lying. And so I think in a transactional way, he had no other choice to do what he's doing. But it did help his case and his cause that I happen to be a gay Black man. Because on top of that, the bigots who came out in support of him could point to, yeah, he's Black, he's a race baiter. Yeah, he's dumb. That's a trope about Black people. Yeah, he's a homo, he's gay. That's homophobia. So it gave him a lot. There was a lot there for him to choose from and for his supporters to choose from. So he was all too happy just to, do it.
Yeah. Well, to the flip side of that too, I'm curious, did having him there and you, like I said, I think it focused your attention in a way that, whether it was good for the, good or bad, it was something that needed your attention and you had to, try to fight for the truth and what mattered. Did that expand your platform? Meaning if he had not been president, would you have the same audience size that you have now? Do you think that by taking on his lies and other things like that, I don't want to say it helped you professionally. That's not what I'm trying to say. That's too.
Do I think it increased my profile?
Yeah.
Yes, of course I do.
Yeah.
But I mean, would I have rather my profile be increased in a different way? Absolutely. But yeah, I'd be lying if I said that didn't happen. Did I want that to happen or did I exploit that? In no way did I exploit it, because it would have been better for me, if you really want to know the truth,
Yeah.
if I had been a Black person who could have been co-opted by Donald Trump. I'm the only Black person in primetime cable. Arguably me and Joy Reid, the two highest profile cable news anchors on television.
Yeah.
And just think if I had been a Trumper in some sense, how much he would have given me interviews. I hate CNN, but I'm going to go interview Don Lemon. Don Lemon, the Black guy on CNN, says, oh, I can't be racist because blah, 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 blah. I would sell a gazillion books to conservatives.
Mm-hmm.
I would get my own conservative radio show and they would love me. And I would be on every, conservative radio show besides Fox News because I'm not in the Fox family. But if I decided to just say leave CNN and become a Black conservative, the world would be my oyster. But I'm not going to sell my soul like that, like many people who have done it now, because they do it. You know why? It's the shortest line to the front, and I'm not going to do that. So yeah, it didn't help increase my profile. Yes. But if I was looking to exploit it, I would have done it the opposite way. Instead of pointing out the lies of Donald Trump and the reality of it, I would have gone along with the false reality and the lies and just created a bigger platform for myself. Like I see every single person pretty much around him, the grift. People see the grift and they jump onto the grift train.
Yeah. No, I mean, that opens up like a huge can of
People are not going to like to hear that, but it's the truth.
It's so true. And I wish we had time to talk about all the things you just opened up there, because it's a really fascinating. But I would like to kind of think about this. You're in the world of CNN, obviously. You're talking about Chris Cuomo and other things. You're in that world. The world of cable news in the Trump era was such a different thing. Has it been, you think, for the network and for everybody, did it take an adjustment period to kind of not be talking about him every night, obviously he still gets talked about a lot, and how much of that was about the removal off of social media? Because if he was still on Twitter, for example, you'd probably be talking about that all the time too. But has it been difficult to kind of flip the page a little bit?
No, not for me. It's been difficult because I've been wanting to do it more. The struggle for me is actually how much attention I give him, because he is the former president of the United States. But I don't think that we have to talk about him at every single instance. The moment he lost, I was ready to go, okay, let's move on. I don't ever want to talk about him again. And not because it has nothing to do with ideology. It has to do with his toxicity and the lies and the racism and the misinformation and the obfuscation and everything. It was just, he's a terrible human being. He was a terrible president. He was not fit for that office. He had the cable news anchors had more respect for the office, someone like me, than he did, and than he does. And he's dangerous. So I think it's now for me, it's easier. I don't really want to talk about him, but I have to when he incited an insurrection on Capitol Hill against our government, and he has gotten people to lie about it. When he's facilitating the biggest voter restrictive voting campaign I think ever to be waged in our country, off of a lie, and he's helping usher in that. I think we have to talk about it.
Yeah. Well, to end, last question, and I so appreciate your time tonight, and especially taking a break from rearranging your room there to.
No, I was actually outside in the backyard with friends, and I had to like leave them.
Even better, even better. That makes me feel even better. So tell them I'm sorry, but
Right.
I appreciate it. But I'm curious, what's something that let's do a two-parter here. What's something that you think you're feeling really optimistic about? Obviously, we've gone through a lot this last year. What do you feel optimistic about? And also, what's something that you think we need to pay a little bit more attention to that's kind of a little bit of a danger or something lurking out there that we're not quite focusing on? So maybe start with the negative one first.
I think the danger is what's happening with voting. I think that people are going to be motivated from the big lie to get back to the truth. That's my gut, and I'm optimistic about that because more people in November of 2020 voted in favor of the country evolving in the right way, not regressing to a time when people didn't have equality and equity. So I think that makes me, and people are wanting to engage in issues of race and issues that affect all people who are underserved in our society.
Yeah.
And so that gives me optimism. The thing that doesn't is Republicans trying to steal elections around the country based on a lie. And I think we need to pay more attention to that. So I think that those of us who are in positions of power as journalists can do what we can do. But ultimately it's up to lawmakers. And ultimately it's going to be up to Democrats, because Democrats they hold the power now. They're in the majority in the Congress, in the Senate, and they have the White House. So if any changes are going to be made, it's going to have to be through them. So Democrats need to realize the moment that they are in right now. And I know that sounds political, but I don't mean it politically, because we have a two-party system in this country. I don't mean it that way. I'm just being practical about how these things are won and how they work. So Democrats are the only party right now that's operating in truth and in a traditional manner that is more receptive to and can usher in an America that is born of the promise of a more perfect union. The other thing that's happening now is not a promise of a more perfect union. It's about minority rule. It's about lies. It's about racism. It's about bigotry. It's about immorality. And so that's a thing that's a sad thing. So I think that Democrats need to be obviously more cognizant of what they need to do and how much urgency and passion they need to feel about continuing on to keep us on the right path.
So the book is This Is the Fire. Everyone watching has a copy of this. I hope you guys will study it, read it. I didn't even get to tell Don that I think he has the best anchor name since Guy Smiley. It's just the perfect name for a TV job. And I hope you get to Tulsa sometime. Come visit us. And thank you so much for the time. And I look forward to watching the very first, I guess, official episode of what's now called Don Lemon Tonight. Would that be tomorrow?
You missed it. It aired on Monday last week.
Oh, last Monday, but tomorrow we'll be back again. So there we go.
And I'll get the name right, because I'm having a tough time, Jeff, because I still say CNN Tonight at the beginning, because I've been saying it for 7 years.
Yeah, well, but thank you, Don.
Thank you.
The time. Thank you for writing the book. Thank you all, everybody, for watching. Stay safe. See you very soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.